Hi, welcome to the small shed. Miserable day, but we're going off on a road trip today. See you in a minute. Now it was December 2019, Christmas present. I had a voucher from my children for a Virgin experience. Unfortunately, as with everything else at the moment, COVID got in the way of that, and it got deferred and deferred and deferred, and I've eventually reached the point where at the end of September the voucher expires. They've extended it a couple of times. So we're off to go and have a look around a car factory today, and as you may well guess, as I'm in the middle of England in Worcestershire pretty much, there aren't that many car factories around, certainly not that are still family owned and are still British, and we're off to see the Morgan Works at Malvern. Now, it's not the first time I've been. I have been before, but one of the other disruptions in the middle of COVID was that they put a new visitor centre in, so that also meant that we couldn't do the factory tour. So it's be interesting to go and see what changes there are in the building itself and to that layout, and I'll give you a walk round, tell you what goes on there, and you can see this very strange anachronism, which is a company that's where cutting edge technology is meeting 100-year-old craftsmanship. You're as likely to find high spec aero aluminium being bonded together as you are to find a bloke with a plane making a wooden frame for a car. So let's go and have a look, and I'll tell you a bit about it. First thing I saw was what looks like something for somebody called Lloyd sitting outside, but it clearly wasn't for me that day. I think there's a lot of ash in this new building, which is probably part of the heritage that they have for using it for the frames on the cars. And at reception you get greeted, lanyard to hang on the little device you get with earphones to be able to have the guided tour so you can hear it within the factory. And it starts off with just a brief video presentation of about 10 minutes or so that lists out the history of the company and how it's grown on the site that it's in from around 1912 when it moved there to the present day, and in which many things have not actually changed a great deal and some have changed hugely. There's a wealth of experience in there. I think when we were in the trim shop there was one item saying that there were sort of 3 or 4 people there that have got 100 and odd years of experience between them working for Malvern. They've got their own Routemaster bus for advertising, which struck a chord with me, having some history with Routemasters. And then you get to see the new aluminium chassis that they have, which are far more high-tech than the old steel ones they used to use. The factory is in a series of units that started at the top with 2 in 1912 when they first moved to the site. It was about 3 years into the company, and over the years they've just gradually added more and more down the hill. And it is on a slight hill. They use that to their advantage by dropping the cars down by gravity almost. They can roll down from one shop to another, and it's all quite well thought out, and again hasn't changed for years. And start off in a sort of a mini visitor centre at the top, where you see a variety of cars there, from the Morgan through the 1960s glass fibre one that failed quite dismally, to the three-wheeler that I know and love. And then you move down through the stores into the first part of the works, and this is where the chassis that are brought in have all the components added to them: front rear suspension, engines, And they eventually end up in this department effectively getting a rolling chassis. They've got all the emissions checking and everything there. They put them on this jig to start with, that they can turn them upside down to work on the underneath, and then, as I say, screw on all the various bits. Each car's got its own little docket with it that lists what it's got to have, and they truly are pretty much custom. I don't think there's probably two the same ever made. And it's interesting to see people using simple hand tools effectively, even on something like this. There's no big robots with arms swinging down and great big heavy power tool hanging from the ceiling that they attach wheels with or anything. It's all still, even at this stage, very much a hands-on, handcrafted affair. The engines come in from BMW, and they have to make a certain amount of change to them because where they sit in the BMW there's a lot more room than there is in the front of a Morgan, so they have to take some of the ancillaries off and reattach their own either adaptations or replacements for these items. And again, all done pretty much by hand with small hand tools rather than big machinery. From that department you move down into the body shop itself, where they bring together the preformed wings. The body panels are put onto the ash frames along with the rear wings, and the body itself is fettled to suit. And certainly down the far end of the shop, where the bonnets are hand bent and rolled, there are people there cutting them with shears to fit, measuring, cutting, and this constant process of getting it right, so that they are still, again, handcrafted, pretty much unique cars. See the little lights in the background. There's various levels of noise, and if they go into the red for too long, clearly it's an indication that the headphones are needed. There's quite a lot of banging and crashing going on. This is the last of the three-wheelers that they've been making for the last few years. This is the buck for the rear section, and the guys are hand beating them, I think, fettling them and putting them together. The shells down the far end are the last ones that are being made. There is a new three-wheeler coming out, but it will be totally different in the future. And then moving down into the wood shop, which is where the base shape is made using ash. They cut and form most of this in-house by hand and create all of the basic shapes they need. There's a mould there which is pretty famous that everybody sees, that forms the rear wheel arches, that has been there for probably the best part of 60 or 70 years. And again, you've got this hand crafted approach and the basic sort of strangeness about the whole thing, where you've got ash frames going on to high-tech aluminium bodies. There's even a body down there that I think is in for refurbishment, customer car. They do rebuilds on customer cars as well, slot them into the production, and pretty flexible. They can make or supply anything for any car since 1909 when they made it. Far end of the wood shop is all the dashboards and internal consoles and things, where you can choose what sort of veneer you want on your dashboard. The dashboards all have to be plywood because of safety reasons, but it's all pretty much choose what you like. Past the paint shop, we didn't go in there, but I have been in the past. Again, you can choose whatever you like. They'll do you any colour you want. and then they move down into the trim shop. All the internal leather gets put in. I think they're all trimmed with leather. They make their own hoods, they make their own hood frames. It's all still very much individually handcrafted for each car on bucks that are there to make the things up. Hand sewn upholstery, all prepared on site from leather skins brought in. And in this section they do all of the last final bits of fittings that are put in the cars, lights, radios, that sort of thing, as well as the trim. And then it's down into the final inspection, pre-delivery inspection and rectification of problems. These are a couple of the last three-wheelers that are going over to the States. They have the headlamps in a strange position because it's to do with the way they register them in America. If the headlamps are close together like that, they can register them as a motorcycle. If they're further apart, it becomes a car. So they ship them out like that, and I think the people move the lights once they've got them home, sort of thing. But these, as I say, are the very last ones that they're making with the V engine hanging out the front. A few body panels off here and there where they're having to do paint rectification before they finally get taken outside, loaded onto transporter, ready to ship out to wherever it is in the world that they're going to. I think they said, I think it's about 70% of the cars are export, so it's a good little export market for them. And here's one of the transporters in, ready to take them off. At the end of the tour you go to see the little museum and the shop. This is the very first, or a replica of the very first Morgan that they made. It appeared at the motor show. A lot of people were interested, but they all basically said, if it's only got one seat like that, we're not that interested. If you put two seats in it, we might be interested. And they put side-by-side seat in it, and from then on, from 1909, it just went mad. And they sold and have basically had full order books pretty much ever since. And so in the museum you get to see the bare bones, the skeleton of the modern +4 car with its combination of high-tech engine and chassis and old school frame. And in the cabinet they've even got the original fence post that they found at the back of the factory that they used to bend the radiator cowls and bonnets across when they were first making them. And along with tools that they used. There's also the Super 8, I think it was, that they produced, that was a slightly, oh, it was the Aero 8, that's right, the Aero 8. It's a pretty ugly thing. I never quite got to grips with the front end of it. It looked like a bug-eyed monster. And certainly, despite their trying to bring these things into the 21st century, I think the customers still want the original vintage look and feel of the cars. Having said that, I think the back is probably the prettiest bit. There's also a model of the three-wheel electric that they've been playing with, which again may well one day see light of day. But I think we'll leave it with the rear view, which is probably the prettiest of the Aero 8, I think. Right, well, I hope you enjoyed the visit. I certainly did. It's somewhere I can go back to time after time and still see something new every time. Hope it was of interest. Look forward to seeing you next week. I'll try and do something different. See you then. Bye.